Let me just introduce Rahul to you all. Rahul is an expert in connecting three dimensions of management, which is idea, insights, and individual. He's regularly speaking at corporate and universities on topics that concerns millennials, such as careers in 21st century, Ikigai, conscious capitalism, ESG, which is the sustainable topic, and the careers in 21st century. He has been writing books and have authored best-selling books. To name some, A Theist Gets the Gita, Engineering to Ikigai, and You Know the Glory, Not the Story. So these are some of his best-selling books. Hailing from Ayodhya, he received a full scholarship to study his engineering at Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and he has an MBA from IIM Bangalore. Rahul is the youngest ever president for IIM Alumni Association in Singapore and is principal corporate advisor group at IIM Udaipur, and academic advisor to Jaipuria Institute of Management. So Rahul has a great mix of corporate and academic inclination and intelligence. And today he's gonna enlighten us with his insights on Ikigai. Thank you so much, Rahul, for joining us today, and we look forward to your session. Thank you, all yours.
Thank you so much, Hinaji and Ekta ji, for inviting me here. It's a pleasure and honor to be addressing audience where I would have never probably gotten an admission. So thank you so much for having me. I'm going to talk about Ikigai. I think a lot of your students might already be familiar with it because there are books written on this, there are papers written on this, professors use this in their classes. Nonetheless, I will try to give my own flavor to it, and we'll take it from there and see how much time do I have though? Can I check that?
Rahul, you have 90 minutes. So
90 minutes.
India time.
Okay, sure. That's lovely. So I'm going to share my screen so that I can do my presentation. So if you, the format we're going to use it is that I'm going to present, and then towards the end of it, we can have Q&A. But at any point in time, if you want to ask question, you are more than welcome. And my sessions, usually when I do it live, they're very interactive. It's a bit difficult to do it interactive on Zoom, but we'll try.
Visible, Rahul?
Sure. Yeah, so as management students and as engineering students, we are familiar with some Japanese terms which have been used for more than 50 years in management. For example, we have this concept of Kanban, which is basically this idea of signaling through wooden planks, something written on wooden boards, saying that, okay, we need to either, let's say, some supply is going down or some next process has to be done. So by writing it on the board, we signal that this needs to be done. And that's called Kanban. This is something which we learn in supply chain, in operations. As MBA students, we are familiar with this. Then another concept similar to that is Kaizen, which is where Zen means good, Kai means change, where you are trying to constantly change things for the better. So continuous improvement is what Kaizen means. And again, this is something which we might be familiar from our MBA classes. Today, however, I'm going to talk about Ikigai. Now, let's break down this word. Iki means life and Gai means worth. Actually, the word is Kai, but when you combine the two, if you say Ikigai, it sounds it's a bit difficult to pronounce and it's not as soft. So in Japanese, when they combine the word, sometimes they soften the new word that comes in. So in this case, Ikigai becomes Ikigai. Essentially, if you literally translate that, it is life and worth. So what is it that makes your life meaningful? What is it that makes your life worthy of living? That's essentially the idea of Ikigai. So let's deal a bit further into this. A lot of you might have seen these kind of concentric and overlapping rings where people try to explain Ikigai in terms of several rings that overlap, and then at the juncture of that, you get your Ikigai. Actually, this is not Ikigai. That's the, if you have number one takeaway from this talk, that's going to be this, that this is not Ikigai. This could be a useful tool for something, but this is not what Ikigai. This is not how Japanese people understand Ikigai. So to understand Ikigai, I thought we will talk about things that are very, very relevant to ourselves as MBA students. So let me begin with this. If you have to pick up a project, or if you have to pick up a career, how do you do it? And obviously, there are many ways of picking up a career or picking up a project. But I think a lot of us, when we are picking up a career or when we are picking up a project in our jobs, we always look at the cash component of that project or of that career. So for example, we look at, okay, if I want to pursue this career or if I want to undertake this project, how much money am I going to get? What is the monetary benefit I'm going to get? And probably this becomes the number one consideration and becomes such a big consideration that it kind of clouds every other consideration that we should be looking at when we are looking at our careers. So let me just ask you this question, and it's, as I said, this is best done when I do it live, but since it's Zoom, we will try our best. I'm going to ask you, if I were to ask you, what makes you rich or broke? What's the answer? I would like to have some people speak into the microphone so that we can get some answers of what makes you rich or broke.
Knowledge. Knowledge is makes the rich.
Okay.
Values.
Values.
Professor Rahul, is it our mindset?
Mindset.
Personal experience.
Personal experience.
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind.
Happiness. Happiness.
Happiness.
I think it depends on your expectations and
yeah. Go ahead.
When we
hello. Yeah. So I think it depends on our expectations, that what and our priorities depends whether we give, like, for example, physical health, mental well-being, whether those are our priorities of becoming rich in terms of capital or how much we have in our bank, whether we value that. So it depends on what we prioritize and what we value and what are our expectations to achieve that.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Any other answers?
Sense of having and not having.
Sense of having and not having.
Spare time that you have at your disposal.
Time that you have at your disposal.
Your perception of what is rich and what is poor. Or
okay.
Rich and broke.
It's a belief.
And what is that perception for you, Gargi?
Whether you consider rich in terms of your finances, whether you consider rich in terms of having control over your time, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So all of you give lovely and beautiful answer, but none of you actually said that rich or broke is money. That's the consistent thing I have heard from you. You said knowledge, values, mindset, peace of mind, happiness, sense of purpose, time at your disposal, expectations, but none of you said money, right?
Rahul, in the very beginning, I did say money, but I think it went unheard. So then
right.
I thought maybe you've been expecting these philosophical answers.
Right. Who said that? Gargi?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So you said money, right? So
yeah, Rahul, I think money will be the outcome of all these efforts. Suppose, if you put a knowledge and if you put a happiness, so all the material eventually will lead to the generation of the money.
Right, right. So you see, this is the beauty of speaking to MBA class and executive MBA class, because you guys have so much of experience that a lot of the things that I'm going to say, it will sound commonsensical, and it should. So yes, rich or broke, although we define that in monetary terms, it is not about money. Why it is not about money? Let's look at a few examples that you might be able to relate to. So let's talk about, there are two brothers. They're both billionaires and each inherited about $40 billion. And then you can start as a billionaire and still you can be broke in a few years if you don't use that money to your advantage, or if you don't have the right mindset, or if you're not having a sense of purpose. This can all happen. However, if you're not born rich, but you have the right mindset, and if you have the right attitude, you can actually become monetarily rich. And you guys kind of would be able to guess who I'm talking about. So if you talk about the two Ambani brothers, they all started with the same amount of money, both of those, right? But one of them today is actually literally a bankrupt guy, and the other is obviously the richest guy in Asia, and by some accounts in the world, depending on what the valuation of his shares is. So rich or poor is, first of all, yes, monetarily defined, but it is not as much about money, but as about mindset. So if you have lost all your money, but your mindset is there, then nothing is broke. But if you have all the money in the world, but your mindset is not there, then you are on your road to being monetarily broke. So that's very true. So thank you all for coming to that consensus. And now let's just move on a little bit. So when we talk about careers, we obviously look at this component of salary. What is my first salary going to be, or what is my salary once I graduate from SP Jain? That is the kind of consideration that we always have. And that's why the part of the talk that we are right now in is called CASH, which stands for career, salary, and happiness. So we'll talk about the salary part first, and then we'll talk about the other two, which is career and happiness. So when we talk about salary, now what happens when we are studying in our colleges, whether we are studying engineering, or we are studying medicine, or we are studying MBA, oftentimes the consideration that we have is, what is my first salary going to be, or what is the salary that I'm going to go once I finish this course? All of you guys have experience, so this is not literally your first salary, but yes, once you finish your course, in that sense, it becomes your first salary. And the way we determine that salary, or the way we hypothetically, or the way we heuristically think of that salary, now we'll talk about whether it's flawed, or is it in the right sense. So let's say you are studying at SP Jain, which all of you are, and you decide that I'm going to now maximize my salary from SP Jain. So how would you maximize your salary? What are you supposed to do about it? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So we have all heard about modern portfolio theory. If we are MBA student, we know how to balance a different kind of assets so that we can maximize the return. For those of you who have yet to do this math in your lecture, I'm going to give you a very top level overview of what modern portfolio theory is. So modern portfolio theory essentially says that if you have a pot of money, then the return that you get on it is dependent on which assets you put that money into. So by assets, we mean shares, we mean bond, we mean cryptocurrency, we mean commodities like gold, and we might mean things like derivatives. So majority of your return, according to this theory, comes from how you allocate your money. Whether you allocate, let's say, 70% in stock or 70% in bond, that makes a difference. What else makes a difference is within that stocks, whether you pick stock A versus stock B. But what mathematics has shown is that stock picking within that individual portfolio, within that individual asset, if you are picking, let's say, Apple versus Google, that has less of an impact versus whether you are picking up government bonds versus, let's say, shares, most of your portfolio share. That has more of an impact. Why am I telling you this? And how is it related to careers? So if you think about careers, and if you think yourself as an asset that needs to be allocated, or if you think of yourself as a pot of money that needs to be allocated, and you are, in a sense, human resource, right? So when I say pot of money, I mean human resource. If I have to allocate you into something, and if I want to maximize the outcome that's going to come out of it monetarily, how am I going to do this? So I have options. I can put myself in marketing. I can put myself in finance. I can put myself in operations. I can put myself in general management. I can put myself into teaching. There are very many options available to me if I consider myself a pot of money, which has to be allocated into a career. So which of these careers will pay you highest money, and how would that be determined? So if we were to borrow this concept of modern portfolio theory and apply it to our salaries, it's very simple. What it says is that majority of your return is going to come from which asset you allocate yourself into. Whether you allocate yourself to, let's say, marketing or operations or general management or finance, majority of your return is decided by which of these assets you're allocating yourself to. So a marketing salary might be different from a finance salary. A finance salary might be different from a teaching salary. So all of these might be different salaries. And depending on where you allocate, that determines your majority of your salary. However, within, let's say, within marketing, now if you want to further fine tune it, and if you want to decide whether I want to go into P&G or I want to go to Unilever, that may have a delta impact, but that impact is not as great as whether you choose to put yourself, let's say, into Goldman Sachs versus putting in yourself into P&G. So again, what I'm trying to tell you here is that if you want to maximize your salary, first of all, you need to pick up an asset, or which you need to pick up a career which pays the highest. I'm just trying to maximize the pay right now here, and later we'll come back to more nuances of that. But for now, just be with me and try to maximize the salary of a person who graduates from SP Jain. So no brainer. All this tells you is that pick up that field which is currently paying the highest. Now that field might be paying the highest among all other fields, and you are the same person, whether you allocate yourself to marketing or to operation. Despite you being the same person, you will get the average salary that that industry pays, at least on day one. Later on, you can prove yourself to be an excellent top-notch marketeer or top-notch operations guy, and then your salary might be different. But on day one, you get the salary which is average salary that that industry pays. Similarly, from the company's point of view, they are also trying to pick up people, right? So when you have two companies, let's say you have P&G and Goldman Sachs, and there are, let's say, 83 of you in this class who are attending this lecture. If P&G decides to pick person A versus person B, they are not going to, you both of you are different, but when they pick you up on day one, chances are, with similar kind of experience and similar kind of backgrounds and similar kind of MBA that you have done, your salaries are going to be similar. It's, although two of you are different, your salaries are going to be same, depending on what is the average salary that they give to MBA students. However, if a different company is picking you up for a different job, obviously the salary is going to change. So where I'm going with this is, you as an individual, when you're picking up companies, your salary depends on what kind of job function, whether it's operation, marketing, finance, or whatever it is, that determines your salary by and large. Similarly, from the company's point of view, when they are trying to offer you salaries, they again, you might have nuances, you might have differences. They will again give you average salaries that they offer to SP Jain graduates. And they may have a different salary that they may offer to some other graduates from some other university. But you being graduate of your university, you will get that average salary. That's what that's what I'm trying to convey in this slide. Now, the same thing I'm trying to convey for those of you who have engineering background. So in this entire presentation, I'm going to mix engineering and management. That's the two domain that I'm familiar with. My first degree was in engineering, my second degree was in management. So I'm trying to draw examples from something I know and see how that applies to our career. So we all know, even if you're not an engineering student, you know that there are some elements, some material that conduct electricity, some that don't. For example, plastic doesn't conduct electricity. That's why you have all your plugs made out of plastic, whereas metals, they conduct electricity. And then there are superconductors, there are semiconductors, and there are all kind of other things which conduct electricity to a lesser or larger extent. Now, if you were to take two material, one which conducts electricity highly and the other which conducts electricity less, and if you were to mix it up, your average conductivity will be the average of those two. So again, if you were to maximize conductivity of a material, of the final product that you're building, majority of that would come from whether you're picking up a metal or whether you're picking up a non-metal. That determines majority of the conductivity. Less of that is dependent on which particular metal you're picking up, whether you're picking up gold or you're picking up copper, you're picking up iron. That makes a difference, of course, but not to the extent to which it makes a difference whether you are picking up, let's say, sulfur and iron. That probably makes more of a difference. So again, the bottom line is, when you are picking up your career, majority of your cash flow depends on which particular asset class you have allocated yourself to, which particular industry type you have allocated yourself to. Now, again, moving on, and remember, we are again trying to maximize the salary of the student who is studying at SP Jain. So once you have chosen the industry that you want to be in, or the job function that you want to be in, now if you want to maximize your salary, how do you do it? Now, it might sound quite ironic, but sometimes an industry that is sinking might be paying you more. And let me explain you why that might be the case and why you should not fall for that trap. So again, I'm going to ask you a question. Let's say you have two companies which have issued bond, and one of the company is about to fail. Which of these companies, and the other company is doing sound, which of these companies do you think will give you higher coupon or higher interest rate? We all know what bond is, right? Bond is something where you invest money, and for investing money, you get coupons or you get interest back. So there is one company which is doing fine, another company which is not doing that great. Which of these companies is going to give you higher interest rate or higher coupon? What's the answer? Let's hear some of the answers.
The one which is sinking.
The one
Yeah.
which is sinking.
Thinking, yes.
Because of the risk.
Because of the risk. Exactly. So it's another way of looking at that same thing is, let's say you are a bank and there are two people who have come to you asking for the same amount of loan because they both want to buy a house. One guy has a regular salary, the other guy doesn't have a regular salary. Which of these are you going to charge more interest? Obviously, the guy who doesn't have regular salary. So, when you allocate yourself to a career, you are again, like I keep taking this example, you're again like that pot of money which is being allocated to certain job function. So the company which is employing you might pay you more because they are themselves going to sink. Why is that the case? Because when you are all SP Jain student, all kind of companies are trying to hire from the same pool of people. And a company which is going to sink, nobody is going to come to that company unless they pay you slightly higher salary for that risk. For example, does any of you want to become, let's say, let me pick up this example. It might be a bit, I don't want to take, okay, let me just pick it up. Anyone of you wants to be the APAC general manager or APAC head for Kodak, which used to manufacture these films, right? Or any one of you wants to, let's say, become the manager for a company that produces electricity using coal. And it might pay you higher than other career options that you have. So why I'm picking up these two examples. So if you look at Kodak, their primary business was in the camera filmmaking. And when digital cameras came, and later when the mobile phone came, those two were the film that you put in your camera. I'm not sure how many of you have actually put a film in the camera. I'm assuming some of you have. That business was going obsolete. So in that kind of environment, if Kodak still needs to hire talent, they're obviously going to pay you more money. It's like a junk bond, which is paying you more coupon. And similarly, if you are right now in a career that is producing energy using coal, that's like a dead end, because there is so much talk about ESG, there is so much talk about sustainability, that those kind of careers are no longer going to be there. It's a bit like investing in London in 18th century, in the 19th century, when you have horse carriages which are going from London to, let's say, Sheffield, or going from London to Leeds, and so on and so forth. You had these horse carriages, and then came the motor cars. So you'd be totally out of your mind if you pick up a career managing those horse carriages, because these cars are totally going to kill that kind of a career. But nonetheless, if you're trying to maximize your day one salary, you might want to pick up a job which is paying you higher, and that might be happening just because that particular industry is about to sink, and a lot of us unknowingly fall for this trap. Again, the same thing using an example from engineering. So if you think of your careers as this force that you put behind, and then this is the block that gets accelerated, that takes on speed, then this friction is essentially representing the price that somebody has to pay for you to make that career viable. So in order for them to make you take that particular career, and if the friction is higher, they need to pay you more salary. Again, the same thing, that if an industry is challenging, or if a job is challenging, and if that kind of job is no longer going to be there in the future, they need to compensate you in some sense, so that you are willing to take on that risk. So in finance, we have this concept of Sharpe ratio. Does anybody know what Sharpe ratio is?
I think it provides a return per unit of risk.
Yeah, it's return. It is actually exactly as you mentioned, it is the return per unit of risk. So again, we will do this with an example. Let's say all of you, I believe, have taken flights. Let's say you're flying and there is a pilot and there is a flight attendant. Which of these do you think is taking more risk?
Obviously the pilot.
Pilot. Any other
Pilot.
answers?
With so many unruly passengers around, I think the equal have the chances to.
I think flight attendant.
Flight attendant. Okay. Any other answers? So,
The nurses and doctors in COVID hospital.
Are taking more risk.
sorry, what did you say, Gaurang Kumar?
I said nurses and doctors in the hospital.
No, but we're talking about aeroplane.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I think it's the pilot because it's more about the responsibility here rather than what has been exposed. So
Yeah,
it's the pilot.
yeah, yeah. So
I would say passengers are taking more risk.
The risk is always high when the things are not known to people. So it will be the passengers who doesn't know anything about how the flight operates. They will have the most.
I relate to it.
yeah, yeah. So we are all kind of thinking in the right direction.
I think risk
So
will
we
be
are
same
all
for
kind
everyone.
of thinking in Yeah, Manish, go ahead.
We can also say that risk is same for everyone. Like everyone is when they are flying, so they are at own risk. Like someone like for pilot, yes, he have responsibility. But if we calculate risk, so it's same, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, right. So let's delve into this a bit deeper. So passengers are obviously the one who are paying the airlines. The ones who are receiving the money from the airlines are the flight attendant and the pilot. So let's focus on those two who are receiving the revenue in this case, or receiving some monetary benefit, because we're again trying to look at the big picture. We're trying to maximize the salary. So when you look at both the flight attendant and pilot, obviously they are both flying the same vessel. They are both mid-air. They're in it together. But I would say that a pilot is taking more risk, because not only is the pilot responsible for his or her own life, but also of the life of 200 people at the back of the plane. Whereas the flight attendant, they also have responsibilities, but their responsibilities, if you compare in proportion to the responsibilities of the pilot, are probably a bit lower. How does this apply to our salary case? Now, you are compensated in a job for the amount of risk you take. So let's say you in a bank, you have an accountant and a trader. Now, trader obviously takes more risk than an accountant. Both of them take risk, but trader takes more risk, and hence the trader gets paid more. Similarly, in the case of hospital, you have nurses and doctors, but we know that doctors who are conducting complex procedure are taking more risk, and hence they are probably paid more than a nurse. So another word for risk is, of course, opportunity. So the one who is taking, who is entrusted with more opportunity, more responsibility, that person is obviously taking more risk, and hence that person is obviously going to be paid in proportion to that. So let me just recap what are the things we discussed so far. And the same example, again, I use engineering example where I say that there is downstream and upstream in engineering in oil exploration. So downstream is basically the gas station or the petrol station where we get our petrol from. Upstream is these oil rigs where you are drawing the oil from. Sometimes these are offshore on the sea. So the person who takes more risk is not the manager at the petrol station, but the guy who is a petrochemical engineer on this rig. So that guy obviously gets paid more than somebody who's managing a petrol station. So just to recap, what all have we discussed? And we are again trying to maximize the salary of somebody who's graduating from SP Jain. Number one, we said that if you want to maximize your salary, you need to pick up an industry that pays more. No brainer, that's obvious. Second thing I said is that when you are picking up an industry, if you pick up a sinking industry, probably that's going to pay more. Again, that is something which we discussed because of the amount of risk involved. Our industry that is sinking might pay you more. And the third thing which I said is that in that sinking industry, if you pick up the riskiest job, that might pay you the most. Now, I had myself gone through, maybe not in such a structured way, but heuristically, I was myself considering which career to take on when I was doing my own MBA. And then it turned out to me that the highest salary that I could ever make was if I were to become a contract killer, which is basically kill people on contract. But then I decided not to take that job because the Sharpe ratio was just too sharp. I was not prepared for that kind of risk taking. And I decided against it. Obviously, the career I went into was banking, which had reasonable kind of Sharpe ratio. I was happy to live with it. And I took that as a career. So the point that I'm trying to draw here is that when we talk about careers, career is more than just a job. In fact, now we talk about rather than a lifetime, a career for life. We don't talk about career for life. We rather talk about multiple careers within our lifetimes. So when we are trying to pick up a job that we get from SP Jain, if we are only focused on our day one salary, we are probably failing to do the net present value calculation for the entire career span that we are going to have. So if you think of the money that you get every month from your salary as the cash flow, and if you try to calculate that cash flow over your lifetime, you will do something called net present valuation of that cash flow. And then you might have this myopic view that, okay, because I'm getting this cash flow right now, it will continue forever, and I can use the rate of expansion at 4% or whatever, and then calculate that. That's the fundamental mistake a lot of us make, because we fail to see how long is that industry going to be around, how long is that career going to be around. And the problem with that kind of flawed analysis is that just like a bond, a junk bond may be paying you 10% versus a good bond which pays you 2%, and you might be enticed to take that bond that pays you 10%. But at the end of the day, that company might go bust, and not only that you lose your potential of that 10%, you also lose your principal. You also lose all the $100 that you put into it to get that 10% that you are expecting. Similarly, if you allocate yourself to a wrong career, if you allocate yourself to a wrong industry, what is the principal that we pay? The principal that we pay is our time and effort. You might put yourself into a career for 5 years, and after 5 years, you may realize, okay, this is a dead end. And now you have to totally undo that 5 years of time and effort that you put. That's your principal. Against that, you get your salary. You are basically, salary is nothing but exchanging your time for money. So you have now lost all that 5 years, and you have lost all the effort that you have put on the way. So it's very important when we are looking at our career to look at the entire end-to-end picture and not just be fooled by the number one or the day one salary that we are going to get. So that's essentially what I'm trying to emphasize when we are looking at these three different ways of maximizing salary. And then I'm essentially telling you that, yes, this might maximize your salary, but this might not be the most prudent way of looking at salaries that you would probably get, or the jobs that you would get, or the career that you would make. So we have to look at it in a more holistic way. So if we have to look at it in a more holistic way, what is the way that we are going to do it? Now we are going to shift gears and talk about that. So CV or eulogy. So let's talk about a little bit about this. When we talk about careers, it's very important to think of how we are structuring the problem. So I think I'm going to ask you again, what's a CV? Or a curriculum vitae? What's a CV?
It's your branding.
It's your
It's
branding.
something you use to brand yourself. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the eulogy of a living person.
Yeah. Any other answers?
CV basically is your professional synopsis.
Yes. Yes. And now what's a eulogy?
That's about your whole life. That's about who you are.
Okay. Thank you,
how
Rashmi.
lived.
Yeah. Some more answers on what's a eulogy?
It's something what other people describe of you.
Something that other people describe. When do they describe this?
Let's say if you have a good
Once
the
you're
person
gone.
is dead.
And you are
On
dead.
a person's death. Exactly. So CV, which is basically your achievements of your entire life, which you put on a piece of paper. A bit different from resume. Resume is short. CV can be 10 pages. Resume has to be 1 or 2 pages. But nonetheless, the idea here is when we are looking at our careers, we are very often bogged down by the idea of adding one more accolade on our CV every year, let's say, one more line. That's what potentially drives us. Whereas when you look at eulogy, it is something which other people are going to talk about when you're no longer there. And it turns out that despite whatever you are doing for your career, despite whatever extra lines you're trying to add on to your resume or to your CV year on year, when people are speaking about you on your eulogy, they're not going to talk about how brilliant you were academically. They're not going to talk about what a top job you had. They are going to talk about what impact you made in the world. Most likely they're going to talk about what personal impact you made into their life, rather than talking about what you yourself are writing in your resume. So when we look at life, oftentimes we are looking at it from today going forward. We are looking at, okay, today I am 35 or 30 or whatever that age is. And then tomorrow I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to do that. And then I want to reach somewhere. To the point that speed becomes more important than direction. You are so busy accumulating those accolades that you have no idea where you're headed, but still you are into it and you keep adding on to you keep adding on accolades to it without realizing whether it's going in the right direction. Now, if you talk about eulogy, and the reason I mention that here is sometimes it makes more sense, or sometimes it gives you clarity as to what you really want if you look at your life backwards. So just to give you this example, let's say you're 70, and then from 70, if you look backwards and then you try to see, okay, now I'm 70, how should my life have been? What would I want my life to look like? Probably that gives you a better picture. If you are at 70 and then you start looking backwards and then you start looking at, okay, if I'm today at 70, then what should my story look like at 60? What should it look like at 50? What should it look like at 40? What should it look like at 30? What should it have been at 20? Now, if you start looking your life backwards, it's kind of like the rear view mirror view of driving. Sometimes you have to look into the rear view mirror just to get the picture of what's behind. So when you look at it from that perspective, it turns out you get much more clarity, because when you are on the deathbed, and in touch with nobody of you gets onto the deathbed, but when you are on your deathbed, the only thing that matters, the only thing that you would be asking yourself is, was my life a success or was it not? And the definition of that actually boils down to, was I happy or was I not happy? So if your life was success by your own account, nobody else is going to tell you what that success is. By your own accounts, your life was a success, then fine. Then you lived a fulfilling life. But if by your own account, on that deathbed, if you're thinking, I wish I had done that, I wish I had changed that, and that means that there is something that you didn't do in accordance to what you wanted to do. So if that is the case, and if you already know that there is something that I wanted to change, or I want to change, if today were my last day, and by the way, nobody can guarantee you that today can't be your last day, because the irony or the beauty of life is that your lifeline is also your deadline, or I should say your deadline is also your lifeline, right? And nobody can guarantee you it can't be today. So if you already know that nobody can guarantee you, and today could potentially be your last day, then you need to then start thinking your life backwards, that if today were my last day, would I call it success or would I call it a failure? Or would I want to, and if you're not going to call it a success, then what would you change? Most of us know what we would change. And if you know what you would want to change, then honestly, what are you waiting for? Because you really don't know how much time you have. So if you really want to change something, you've got to do it right now. Why am I mentioning this? Because again, a lot of times when we're looking at careers, we tend to think, okay, let me first do this, then I will do that. And what you are postponing by doing that is the true thing that you really want to do. And what I'm trying to tell you here is that bring that forward, because you really don't know when you are going to leave and you have only that much time. So bring that, what you really want to do, forward. Don't push it towards the end. Okay. There is this book, which is by Bon Iver, and it's called Top 5 Regrets of Dying. So Bon Iver was a nurse in a hospital which was taking care of people who were about to die. And oftentimes she would talk to these people, and then they would tell her about the regrets of their life. So would you like to take a stab at what these people were telling her? What would be the top, what would be the some of the things that dying people would tell to this nurse about the regrets of their life?
Not giving enough time to the family.
Not enough time to be with the family, yes. What else?
Wish I traveled more.
Wish you traveled more, yes.
Maybe the success that they had achieved was all a fallacy.
Success was a fallacy.
Taking better care of your health.
Better care of their health.
Trying to please everybody else.
Trying to please everybody and ending up pleasing nobody, including yourself.
I haven't
What else?
lived. They could not spend money which they hardly earn.
Spend money which they earn so hard.
I haven't lived how it was supposed to be.
I haven't lived how it was supposed to be.
Never found the purpose.
Yeah. So you are all on the right track. Look at what they said. These are the top 5 regrets. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected me of. Right? I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. I wish I had let myself be happier. None of them is talking about money. What they are talking about is, I wish I had lived a life true to myself. I wish I had lived the way I wanted and not the way others forced me to, or not the way the others kind of got me into living. Because we are always influenced by what others would think of us, how our bosses view us, how our spouse view us, how our children view us, so on and so forth. There are a lot of things that start influencing how we want to live. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Some of you said that, how do I spend this money that I worked so hard for? That's what they regret. Okay, I worked so hard for what? I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. Again, that family dimension that some of you mentioned. How many of you go and tell your parents that you really love them? How many of you tell your spouse that you love them? And in the end, you realize it's too late. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Right now, you're all in the same MBA class. You would be hanging out with each other, but would you continue that 5 years from now, 10 years, 20 years? That's what people regret. I wish I had let myself be happier. Probably that's the number one regret that everybody has. I wish I had let myself be happier. And the secret to your happiness is actually within you. There is nobody else that can tell you what makes you happy. So these are the top 5 regrets that people who are dying are having. So now with that, I'm going to gear towards happiness itself. What does it mean to be happy? How can you be happy? So again, I'll pick up this example that most of you can relate to, which is about grades and marks that we get when we take exam. So I have distilled this happiness thing into a very simple equation where I say happiness is equal to attainment minus desire. So again, it would be useful if some of you want to decode that equation. What does that equation exactly mean? Does anybody want to take a stab at that?
Happiness is equal to, I mean, what you've achieved and what you aspire for. The difference between.
Okay.
What you have in hand minus what you still want to have, desires.
Okay. Anything else?
Means
It eliminates the desire
satisfaction
from
to your
attainment.
achievements. Yeah. If you get more than what you expected for, it causes happiness.
If you get more than what you expected for, then you are happy. Okay, let's build on that thought. So let's say you are writing an exam at SP Jain, and I'm not sure if you get grades or if you get marks, but let's assume you get grades. I'm assuming you get
both.
grades. You get grades, right? Yeah. So let's say you're writing an exam and you desired, and the key thing over here is desired. Yeah, you desired to get a B. By some luck, you got an A. What does it do to you?
And of course, we'll be thrilled.
You will be thrilled. You will be happy. So you have attained more than.
Expectation was low, but you get more than that.
So you have attained more than. Yeah, Manish. Yeah. So
I guess we have to keep our expectations low to get happiness.
Okay, I think there is an echo, so I understood what you're saying. So you might want to put yourself on mute. Yeah. So exactly in that direction. So when you attain more than you desire, then you're happy. right? So when you got an A, you are desiring a B, then you're happy. But what if you got a C? What's going to happen then? Manish, what's going to happen then?
Then we will become sad because what we expected, we didn't get that.
Yeah, you will be sad. So superficially, when you look at this equation, it's very simple.
Superficially, when you
It just says that when you attain more than you desire, then you're happy. When you attain less than you desire, then you're unhappy. And there are two ways to maximize, two ways to make this equation positive. So when this equation is positive, then you're happy. When this is negative, then you're unhappy. So one way to make yourself happy is by constantly attaining more and more and more and more. Bigger house, bigger car, bigger promotion, so on and so forth. And that is by and large how we try to, that is by and large the Western model of happiness, where you want to have, as I said, a bigger car, bigger house, a higher promotion to be happy. You're constantly running on a hedonistic treadmill where you are trying to attain more and more in order to be happy. Now, the only problem with that is you don't always control, you don't always have control on what you might attain. I'm sure that everybody in this class, I would be very surprised if anybody in this class has always attained what they desired. You may desire something, but you don't always attain what you desire. So it's very clear that if your happiness is depending on how much more you can attain, then eventually you are going to set up yourself for unhappiness, because you really can't control this part of the equation. However, what you can control is this part of the equation, and it's easier said than done. It requires a lot of practice, but you can actually control this part of the equation. You can actually lower your desires. And when you are lowering your desire, then your locus of happiness is within you as opposed to externally, right? So then, because attainment depends not only on you, but various other factors that go into making something possible. For example, you might want a promotion, but that's not totally dependent on you. That depends on whether your boss likes you, whether your company has the means to give you a promotion, and many other factors will go into it before you finally get promoted. So what can you control? You can actually control your desire. And that's again the first level interpretation of this equation. And in the same thing, I would say that anybody, any student who ever cheated in an exam did so because their desire took the better of them. Their desire to get that B grade that they so badly wanted overtook so much that they forgot what they should be really doing. They forgot to focus on studying, and they rather use some other means to attain what they really desired. And that can really color your decision. Any accountant who has ever fudged numbers in an accounting book, or any CEO who has ever done that, is because, again, their desire to be that #1 company, or the desire to have that quarter-on-quarter result has overtaken them, and then they don't know, they can't distinguish right or wrong. Similarly, any salesperson who has ever bribed is again because their desire to be the #1 salesperson, or desire to meet that quota that they have been set for that quarter has overtaken them. So again, the essence I'm trying to give you here is that if you don't control your desires start controlling you. And that is the #1 reason why so many people are unhappy, because they let their desires control their happiness rather than controlling their desires. Now, finally, the final thing in this equation is that you obviously cannot, when you present this to MBA class, because MBA guys are so smart, they would say, okay, so if I put my desire to 0, then I will always be happy. Now, the problem with that is that as long as you're in this human body, it's impossible to put human desires to 0. That's not possible. However, what is possible is expanding the scope of your desire. So rather than thinking about yourself, if you expand the scope of your desire to be more magnanimous, to be more universal, to apply to people other than yourself, that can be done. For example, rather than trying to say, okay, how can I maximize this salary for myself? If you start thinking, okay, how can I maximize the welfare of, let's say, 10 people by setting up a company which is going to employ XYZ number of people. Now that's the point where you are trying to not just think about yourself, you're trying to think about more than yourself. And that's when you would see that you would have a different sense of purpose, which is not so self-centric, but it is kind of moving in that selfless direction where you're trying to think of others. And then your locus of happiness also changes. It changes from self to selfless. And it's easier said than done, but it's a process. Again, there is another class that I talk about, which is life and management lessons from the Bhagavad Gita, where we go into much more detail of this equation. For this class, which is dealing on Ikigai, I will just leave you at that there are desires which are selfish and there are desires which are selfless. So the more selfless desires you have, the happier you get, because you would always realize this, that there is always more pleasure in giving than taking. Anytime you have given something to somebody, you will always feel much, much more happier than when you are actually taking something from somebody. And again, some of you mentioned in the beginning about how we perceive our life actually determines whether we are broke or we are rich. So in that note, I would say that the way you look at your life, there are two ways of looking at your life. One is whether you think your life is wholesome, and the other way of looking at your life is whether you have a hole in your life. So it is whole versus whole, the WHOLE whole versus HOLE whole. So if you think your life is a whole, it's a void, it's a vacuum, it's something that you need to fill by sucking whatever you can get from your surrounding. That's looking at your life from a point of view of HOLE, that my life is a vacuum. My life has this pit, and I need to somehow fill it by getting whatever I can from the system, whatever I can get from the surrounding. That is gonna make it better. That is going to level it up, and that's how I'm going to be happy. That's one way of looking at your life. The other way of looking at your life is to see that, okay, my life is already wholesome. I'm so fortunate to be already studying in a top MBA college in the world. I'm so fortunate to have whatever I have in my life. I'm so fortunate to be at this point in my life. How can I ensure that other people also have that opportunity? And that's when you start looking at your life from a WHO whole perspective, where you start giving to others. And it's quite kind of ironic, but when you start looking at your life from that angle, you would notice that the universe conspires to make sure that your life is actually truly wholesome, WHOLESOME, wholesome. Okay, so moving on. Again, when I recruit people, a lot of people would mention that they are very result driven. They're very result focused, but again, in life, you can't really control results. What you can control is efforts. You can only, in that example that we were taking earlier about the child who's writing exam and wanting to get a B grade. So you can't control whether you get a B grade or not. However, what you can really control is the amount of effort you put into getting that B grade that you want, right? So that is in your control. Whether you ultimately get a B grade or you get a A grade or a C grade, that is really not in your control. The examiner might set up a tough paper, or you might have a bad stomachache on that day. That is not in your control. What is in your control is your effort. As long as you have put your 100% effort, and this is very important for you as managers, as long as you have put your 100% effort, whatever result came out of it, just let it be. I mean, whether you became the #1 guy in your company, or whether your company that you're leading is the #1 company on the stock exchange, that should not determine your course of action. What should determine your course of action is whether you put your 100%. Because if you again take up that example of the child who was wanting to get a B grade, even if by some fluke the person got A grade, and he knows or she knows that I did not study as well for this, but I got an A, that success is hollow, right? You don't feel, you don't really feel very good about it. You feel, okay, yeah, I got it, but it's not wholesome. It's not a very solid happiness that you get. As opposed to, let's say you studied and you put your best effort, and of course you got a C, you were expecting a B, or you're hoping for a B. You do feel sad about it. I mean, we can't take human emotions away from humans. But then you also know that this is all I could do. I put my best effort. I was sincere in my effort. And at the end of the day, whatever I got, I'm going to work harder next time. That is probably what is going to give you more dividend in the long run. And on the way, you will be much more happier, because if you're result driven, you're actually fixating all your happiness to that result, which may or may not be there. Whereas if you're effort driven, every inch that you take towards that result that you want is going to make you happy. So the journey becomes more important than the destination. So again, the same thing I would say in a different way, that it's your career, it's your life. You need to know who is in the driving seat, who is driving your career. Is it you who is in the driver's seat, or is it somebody else? Is the society, is your parents, or is your spouse, is your university driving your car, or is it you who are in the driver's seat? It's very important, because in life, how your career is going to pan out, or how your life is going to be panning out is something like this. Most of us, when we come to an MBA class, we know what we want to be. We want to be having a job, let's say, in a FMCG company, or we want to have a job in finance, or we want to have a job in general management. We know what we want to do. And when you are in your MBA class, your institute will teach you how to get there. They will teach you some accounting, they will teach you some finance, they will teach you some thing about 4P, 5C in marketing. They will teach you some net present value calculation. They will teach you something about general management. They will teach you MBTI. They will teach you all those things, which will kind of give you an idea of how to get what you wanted to get. However, this is your car. This is you. The most important thing that universities and colleges will fail at is why. Why do I want to be that FMCG guy? Why do I want to be that finance guy? What is the why that is driving? That's where probably the colleges might not pay that much of emphasis. A lot of emphasis will be on how. And this is and the reason why they can't do it is not because they don't want to, but because this why is very personal. This why is like the fuel that keeps you going to get to that what. On the way, you will have these ups and downs. On the way, you will have these meanders. But what will really get you there is that why. The stronger your why is, the more fuel you have in your belly, the more determined you are to reach to that what you really wanted to be. So again, you need to figure out why I want to do this before you embark on how you're going to do it. So if you have your why in place, then this what and how is elementary. A lot of us would do it reverse though. We would figure out the what, and then we'll try to think of how. And this why never gets asked or never gets questioned. And because of that, we don't live fulfilling life. Because of that, our lives are not wholesome. And because of that, we're not happy. What I'm trying to say is flip it. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Okay, now we are actually going to come to Ikigai. Having discussed all this, now we're going to talk about these circles. And now we're going to talk about how these circles can actually be useful in determining what your career is going to be, how your life is going to be. So Ikigai, as I mentioned in the beginning of my talk, is essentially it's essentially what makes your life meaningful, what makes you get up on a Monday morning to go to work, what drives you. That's Ikigai. Now, these circles can help you understand what Ikigai is, but these circles are not what Ikigai is. But nonetheless, let's talk about how these circles can help you understand what Ikigai is. So first of all, when you're trying to figure out your Ikigai, or your reason for being, why you exist, what you want to do, you need to understand, or you need to figure out what you're passionate about. What is it that truly drives you? And many people will go from cradle to grave without realizing or without even questioning what is it that I'm passionate about. So first and foremost, you need to do is figure out what you're passionate about. And once you figure out what you're passionate about, then you need to use your skills. Now, all of us have skills. The problem is that we start comparing ourselves to others. We say, okay, Rashmi has such a good orator, and then Jason thinks, and Rashmi thinks Jason is such a good person at number crunching. And Rashmi is thinking, I'm not as great as Jason, and Jason is thinking, I'm not as great as Rashmi. That's the problem that we have. We start comparing ourselves to others, whereas the real thing here is you need to focus on your own skills. What is it that you can do with your skills? So again, think about what you are passionate about, then use your skills to solve for a world problem. Why a world problem? A world problem because only a world problem is going to be a problem worth solving for, a problem where you can make an impact. If your roof is leaking, that's not a world problem. But if every house in that street is leaking, then that's a problem worth solving for. If the whole town's roof is leaking, that's actually a very beautiful problem to solve. So again, make sure that the problem that you're trying to solve in your career it's a big problem, because if it's not a big problem, then you will not be able to make the impact that you can really make using your skills in the area of your passion. And finally, the most important thing, while you're trying to do this, you always need to ensure that you get paid for it, because if you're not going to get paid for it, then it's anything but Ikigai. It's not going to be sustainable. You cannot take money out of the equation. You got to be paid for what you're doing. So just to elaborate this, or just to explain this, let's say there is somebody in the class who thinks that that they have a passion for music. They really like to sing, and they believe they have the skills to do that. And they also think that the world needs more melodious music for whatever reason that they think that is needed. But when that person actually sings, it's so horrible that everybody else goes to sleep. Then you're not going to get paid for it. That's not your Ikigai. Then you have not yet figured it out. So ultimately, you need to marry these things in a way that you get paid for. You can't be in isolation thinking of your passion in an area that doesn't make monetary sense. You have to solve all of this in tandem. And only when you do that in tandem, you will be able to reach your Ikigai, which is something that will make your life meaningful. So these circles can help you get to your Ikigai, but in themselves, they are not your Ikigai. Again, so what is Ikigai? So in the Indian philosophy, we have this concept of dharma, and very nuanced understanding of that is swadharma. So dharma again is not religion. Dharma is basically, if you look at the definition of dharma, it comes from an Indian scripture called Mahabharata. In that they say dharmam dharnat itahu. That means one that sustains is dharma. Something that sustains is dharma. Now, what sustains what? Sustains the creation. So anything that you do which sustains the creation is dharma. Anything that you do against that creation is adharma, which is opposite of dharma. So everything has a dharma. Even innate object, non-living objects have dharma. For example, if you talk about fire, the dharma of fire is what? Can somebody tell me what the dharma of fire is going to be?
Burn anything that comes into contact.
To burn, yes. Dharma of fire is burn. So
To burn and heat, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Then the dharma of water is going to make things wet. The dharma of sugar is going to be to make things sweet. So even these inanimate objects have dharma. So if fire starts to wet, and if water starts to burn, and if sugar starts to be bitter, then that's adharma. That's not the innate thing that thing is supposed to be. Similarly, on the living being, we also have dharma. So, for example, if you look at cow, the dharma of the cow is actually very simple. The dharma of the cow is to eat grass, produce milk, and then it excretes something in form of cow dung. That cow dung goes into the soil. That soil gets fertilized. Then this grass grows again, and then this cow eats grass. Then again it produces milk, and that cycle continues. So the dharma of the cow is to eat the grass and produce milk. The dharma of the grass is basically to, in a sense, eat that cow dung and then grow. So this system is in balance because, and that's the dharma of the system, that the system is in balance as long as everybody is doing what they're supposed to. Now, if you think of cows, how much grass can it eat? It can't eat. It can only eat as much as its hunger is there. So this is always in balance because the cow always eats as much as it needs. Whereas if you look at humans, we often tend to be driven by not by our needs, but by our greed. So if we were that cow, we would tend to overgraze, and with the result, we'll cause a disbalance in this dharma. So now this is a very broad level understanding of dharma, but if you apply that understanding of dharma to individuals, each of us have our own swadharma. Swa means your, and dharma is what I said. It's the order or the innate ability of something. So each one of us has our own individual dharma. For example, if you talk about a doctor's dharma is to save life. Whereas if you talk about a soldier's dharma is to protect the borders of the country. And for that, the person might need to even kill the other person who is fighting on the other side. So both of these have different dharmas. So when we talk about a soldier's dharma is to kill, and the dharma of the doctor is to save. So you have to find out what resonates with you. So if I put a soldier with a machine gun on the border, the compassion, the same compassion which is a boon for a doctor, will become an inhibition for a soldier. So you really need to find what your swadharma is, what's your innate ability, what is it that you are composed of. And once you have found out what your dharma is, what your swadharma is, you have to align your karma. Karma is essentially your activities in accordance to your dharma. Why am I mentioning you this again? Again, in the light of Ikigai, in the light of your careers, most of us will be fooling ourselves. We will be aligning ourselves to a career that is not, we'll be aligning our karma, our activities, our day-to-day activities, our career, opposite to our karma. We might be great teachers, but we might be doing a job in a bank or something, which is not the true nature of what you really want to do or what you really should be doing, which is not in accordance to your swadharma. And then you might be picking up something just totally opposite. Why? Because you might be driven by those salary considerations and other considerations that really color your vision as to what really you want to do. So coming back, Ikigai is a Japanese word which means reason for being. Why do you exist? Something that makes your life worth living for. It gives you a sense of direction and purpose in your life. It is about doing what makes you happy and keeps you going, rather than something that you feel that you are being pushed against a wall. It is pursuing what makes your heart truly light as a cork, as opposed to heavy like a stone. So again, this question of what is it that makes me happy? Sometimes we don't even know what makes us happy. So there is a very beautiful definition that I once heard from Madam Bhattacharya, who was the CEO of SBI Bank in India. And she mentioned that happiness is when you feel light like a cork in water, as opposed to heavy like a stone. And I think that's the most beautiful definition that I've ever come across, that when you are really feeling light, that's happiness. When you feel heavy, that's unhappiness. So again, continuing in this discussion, Ikigai is the fire within that propels you to spontaneously spring into action. When you don't need those external things to make you do something, when you don't need that salary. In fact, one way of looking at happiness is, what is it that you would do if money was not a part of it? What is it that you would do if salary was not paid to you? If you are not paid money, what would you really do? That actually is your Ikigai. That is what will really make you happy. All you got to figure out is, okay, this is what I would do if I were not paid money for it, but is there a way that I can do this and get paid for it? Once you have figured out that, that's your Ikigai. Ikigai is about enjoying the journey of life while deriving meaning for it. So it is about the journey. You are continuing your journey, and as you continue in your journey, you are deriving happiness and meaning from it, as opposed to waiting for that end destination, because that end destination may never come. You don't know how long your life is. So you need to derive happiness while you are going on this journey. And finally, Ikigai is the resilience that keeps you motivated and keeps you going in the face of adversity. No matter what career you pick up, you will always have ups and downs. You will always have a boss who nags at you. You will always have some deal that you could not make. You will always have something that will make it difficult for you. Now, if you don't have your sense of purpose, if you don't have your Ikigai in your place, if you don't have that why sorted out, then it will become very difficult for you to go. It will be very, very challenging, because you will always keep facing these challenges that come on your way. You talk to a Nobel laureate, you talk to the person who won the Miss World contest, you talk to anybody who got the Pulitzer Prize, all of them have had to face difficulties. There is nobody that I know who has not faced difficulties. The only thing that keeps you going is your Ikigai, your sense of purpose. Why am I doing this? When you have that in place, you will be able to overcome that. And resilience is very, very important in life. You got to have that resilience. So again, when I compare resilience versus happiness, so I compare happiness to like salt in life. So a little bit of salt can make your food very tasty. A little bit of happiness can make your life interesting. But what you really need in life is resilience, and resilience is a bit like the sugar, right? So let's say there is a famine, and then you're not able to find food. So if you're forced in that kind of circumstances, you can survive. You will survive on sugar. Even if I take away protein, even if I take away fibers, even if I take away everything else from your life or from your diet, and if I only give you sugar, you will have severe deficiency, but you will be able to survive. So resilience is like that sugar. When you're not getting everything that you need from your life, you can still survive if you have that resilience, if you have that sugar in your life that keeps you going. So finally, Ikigai not only gives a sense of purpose to your life, but also is the very motivation for living it. So I hope with that, I have managed to explain what Ikigai is in some sense. I have written a few books on Ikigai. 2 of them are on your screen. Engineering to Ikigai, and the other one is reads You Know the Glory, Not the Story, 25 Journeys Towards Ikigai. And in my books, I have talked about some of the people who have truly discovered their Ikigai. At least from my lens, I feel that they have all discovered what they really want to be. And again, when we talk about Ikigai, if you look at this screen and the next screen, all of them have different career. For example, Aarti is doing some work on infant mortality. Manik was the chief product officer of Uber, and then Kiran is a celebrated dancer. Karthik is an academician. So all of these people are different. And then you would question that if all of these people have different careers, different things that they have chosen for themselves, then how can you say that all of them have reached their Ikigai? So it's a bit like this. If you look at electricity, the same electricity, when it goes in the bulb, it lights. When it goes into an electric car, it moves that car forward. When it goes into a fan, it moves the blade in a circle. When it goes into a refrigerator, it cools. And when the same electricity goes into a heater, it heats. So Ikigai is like that electricity. It is like that energy that goes inside each one of us, and depending on our own swadharma, our own propensity, it manifests differently. So when it goes into Jason, it can make an entrepreneur out of him. When it goes into, let's say, Baisakhi, it makes a traveler out of her, because each of them have a different propensity to react to the same energy. And another example that I can give you, which will make it easier, you are the same person, but when you are sitting on a bicycle versus when you are sitting on in a car versus when you are in an aeroplane, you're going at different speeds, because you are the same, but the surrounding that you have surrounded yourself with, the tools that you have surrounded yourself with, make you go at a different speed. So in the context of Ikigai, in the context of electricity, that example that I was taking, in the context of that energy that keeps you going, you may have the right energy, but you still need to surround yourself with the right surroundings so that you go at the speed that you want yourself to be going at. So again, final thought for you is that Ikigai is actually finding out the reason that you exist, the gift that you will give to the mankind. What is it that you will leave behind? What is it that people are going to talk about when you are no longer here? They're not going to talk about what a great guy you were, that you got into SP Jain and all your life accolades. They are going to talk about how you made an impact to someone else's life other than yourself. So think about those things. And in that context, think about how Ikigai can help you reach those things. So with that, I will come to a pause. We have about 15 minutes to take questions, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Rashmi and one more fellow, Sudhindra, yeah, they had raised their hand.
Sure.
You can please go on.
Yeah, sure. So you started
Hello,
with
Rahul. Sorry,
yeah?
Rashmi, to interrupt. You can go ahead. Yes.
All right. Okay. So thank you, Rahul. It was a good session indeed. I would want to know from you, from your perspective, you showed an equation of happiness. And you said that you reduce the desire, you are a happy person, right? So isn't it also a trap that in order to become happy, you reduce the desire, you will never be able to attain the best of yourself, because more desire you have, more you put in effort, more you try to attain, achieve, and reducing the desire means reducing your ambition. Reducing desire means you are actually short selling yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, so without a fail, I get this question in in every session that I do. And thank you so much for that question. I had deliberately wanted somebody to ask me that question, and thank you for giving that opportunity. So yes, so this is where we need to understand the true meaning of where this desire comes into. Without desire, as you rightly pointed out, not just individual, but even the mankind will come to a standstill. Without desire, first of all, there would be no progeny, there would be no next generation. So you definitely need the desire for not just individuals, but also for the mankind to keep going. And as you rightly said, that if we set our desires to a very base level in the Maslow's hierarchy, if you just put it at the very bottom of the pyramid, how are you ever going to be able to reach self-actualization? So the way to look at this is that yes, you need desires in order for you to propel yourself, in order even for you to set goals. So if you look at desire here, all of us will have desire, but then we need to figure out, what am I desiring? And once you have set your desires, once you have set up your desire, is very, very important and helpful in setting up goal. Once you have set up your goal, then you need to divorce yourself from that desire. From there on, you need to focus on the effort. You need to focus on the journey and not on the desire, because if you are so hung up on the desire, then the second thing that I talked about in this equation, where your desire overtakes you, when your desire starts controlling you rather than you controlling your desire, starts kicking in. And that's when there is a true danger of you falling prey to desire. In the Indian philosophy, the way we explain this, and I'm taking the liberty of explaining you with the Indian philosophy perspective, because from your name, I'm guessing you're Indian. So there is something called abhyas and bairag. So once you have fixated your goals, your dhey, which is your goal, then you have to actually bairag. That means you need to distance yourself from that desire, and you have to focus on the abhyas of actually getting to that dhey or getting to that goal. So when we say in this equation, for the purpose of this equation, when we say that you have to lower your desire, what it means is that your attachment to what you really, your attachment to attaining that by hook or by crook, that is what you need to control, not your desire to achieve something. So there is a bit of a nuance here, that desire is required for you to set goals, but at the same time, let not those goals be overpowering how you are going to be going on that journey. Does that answer you, Rashmi?
Yeah, so the follow-up of this is that bigger you dream, bigger you achieve, right? So desire necessarily is not a bad thing. You need to have a certain amount of detachment when it comes on achieving those set goals and desires, and not really get overwhelmed by the result. So basically, at a spirituality level, what Gita teaches you, focus on your karma, focus on your actions, right? That's where we come.
So actually, this is I mean, I think you got to the crux of it. This is actually a slide from my other session that I do, which is Life and Management Lessons from the Bhagavad Gita. This is actually paraphrasing Bhagavad Gita 2.48. It's written in equation format. And in that class, I asked the students to guess which shloka it is. And it is exactly what you're mentioning, which is basically focus on your karma. And again, that karma has to be in alignment with your dharma, rather than focusing on the desire part of it. So exactly, I think you got the essence of the equation.
Thank you.
Rahul, I would like to ask, thank you for the thoughtful session, actually much needed on the weekend, kind of rejuvenating. And where do you put aspiration in this equation? I mean, is your answer same what you said to Rashmi just now? I mean, without aspiration, our life would be stale. I mean, desire can be equated to being greedy or ambitious, but a minimum aspiration is required. I mean, whatever you intend to do, good or bad, I mean, you must aspire. Otherwise, also total detachment with the results would not be practical in 2022. However philosophical you could be, but a sense of something should drive you. I mean, something should drive you. I'll take one step further. Too much giving is also not good. You might be depleted totally. You must also receive something. So where do you put all of this? I mean, like aspire, get, give. How do you connect it all?
Yeah, so everything in moderation. Again, I think this class is very enlightened. So you're all going into a discussion that is much deeper, but I'll answer nonetheless. So as I mentioned to Rashmi, that you definitely need that desire to set your aspirations, to set your goal. Without desire, the whole humanity will come to standstill. The only thing to watch out for is that how do you how do you do it in a way that your desires don't overpower you? Let me give you an example, right? So for example, let's say there is a fire, right? So in order for the fire to keep burning, you need wood, right? And then the wood will keep the fire burning, and it will sustain in a sustainable way. And then if I were to say, if you were to compare your desires to that fire that's burning, then obviously, yes, you need a little bit of desires to keep that fire burning. And then if I were to then say that, okay, one way for you to basically live your desires, or basically implement your desires, would be okay, let me put it this way. So you need to put wood in that desire, but then if you put such a big log of wood onto that fire, you will actually end up extinguishing that fire itself, right? So it's very important in life to know the art of moderation. So yes, you need wood for that desire to keep burning, and desire is desirable for you to set up your goals, for you to aspire to goals, which then gives you a sense of direction in your life. And then on the way, you attain some happiness once you have achieved those goals. But at the same time, if you take up this example of the fire and the log and the wood I'm giving, you need to know how much of that log that you need to put into that fire without actually extinguishing that fire itself, without actually extinguishing the very purpose of the fire that was keeping it lit. So as you rightly pointed out, that yes, there is always everything in moderation. How much can you give? How do you start? But more often than not, the problem is the reverse. The problem is people do not know where to start with this lowering of this desire. And I'll give you a very simple example, and you will realize how difficult it is. So let's say you are in your job, and you get your first salary after you graduate from SP Jain. And then I tell you, okay, now this is the fruit of your action. This is the salary that you got as the fruit of your action. You're fully entitled to it. Now do one thing, go and donate 10% of this to charity. It's very hard. It's very hard to detach yourself from the hard-earned money that you earned, rightfully so. But the first time you do, it's going to be difficult. If you go and donate that 10% to charity or whatever you want to give it to, it'll be difficult. The next time it'll be easier. Then over time, you might be able to increase that from 10% to 20% to 30% to 40% to 50%, and so on and so forth. And even if you look at companies that are most sustainable, the companies that have outlasted, let's say, returns on stock, S&P 500, and so on and so forth, there is this concept of conscious capitalism, where studies have been done on companies that have existed for the longest time. For example, let's say in the Indian context, if I were to talk about the Tatas. So most of these companies which have outlasted have had a bigger purpose, and they have actually committed themselves to causes which you can by and large call charitable. So yes, there is a limit to how much you can give, how much you can take, and it's always the key over here is balance. That balance has to be maintained. So again, to summarize it, it's about moderation. It is about knowing when it is. You have to be honest to yourself. Within yourself, when your desire has overtaken you, and within yourself, when you're being lethargic and you have totally given up and you're not even trying. So within yourself, you have to be true to yourself. Once you're true to yourself, you will be able to understand what is the right amount of desire you need to have, what is the right amount of things that you can part with, what is the right amount of giving that you need to do, what is the right amount of taking that you need to do. But the genesis of that is being true to yourself. I know this is probably it requires a much more deeper discussion, but in the interest of time, I will just leave it at that.
Hi, Rahul. First of all, I would like to thank you for your session. It was indeed a very good one. It is obvious that everyone should find out their Ikigai and work towards that. That gives more happiness to you. But the problem is that when we find it, it becomes very late for us. Like most of the people who finds it early, that is good for everyone. But by the time you realize that you need to do this, but that become too late. So you do you suggest something around it, or you have some sessions do you conduct for to find out the Ikigai?
Yes, exactly. So again, there is only as much I can pack in a 90-minute session. I do a workshop which is called Find Your Ikigai. In fact, if you pick up my book, I'm not sure if the screen is visible. It will say Find Your Ikigai at the very end of the book. So that is something that I do in a specialized session. It takes about 90 minutes to do that session, where we actually go through the process of, okay, first of all, congratulations to you if you already know your Ikigai, if you already know what it is, and if your only concern is it is too late, then you're already on a very right track. More often than not, what we notice is that people don't even know what their Ikigai is. So in that workshop, we try to figure out what Ikigai, what your personal Ikigai is. Just like I talked about Swadharma, you need to figure out what your personal Ikigai is going to be, and then we work towards achieving that. So in nutshell, what I can tell you, and this might give you clarity, it is about, if you just close your eye and you said that it might be too late. So again, you have to be very honest to yourself, and it's not about your mother or your father or your spouse or about your teachers, it's about you. Just be very honest to yourself and answer that question to yourself. Was my life a success? Was I happy? And if you can answer that question, either in yes or no. If it's yes, then nothing to change. But if you say no, then you already know that there is something that you want to change. And again, I'm repeating myself what I said in the lecture, but in the interest of time, this is only as much I can share. You have, once you know that I want to change that, then there are ways of achieving that. And to answer your question, that we may know about our Ikigai, but we may realize that there is not enough time. Actually, you really don't know how much time you have. This is a fallacy. So if you compare, I'll give you an example. Barack Obama, he became the president of the United States at the age of, I think, 40 or 42, whereas Trump became the president at the age of 69. So different people have their own pace. You don't know how long you're going to live. The important thing is not to know how long you're going to live, but to live your life in a fulfilling and meaningful way. So there is, I'll take the liberty, I'm originally from India, I'll take the liberty of saying something in Hindi, which is from a movie that I like very much. There is a movie which I think came in 1970s. It's called, I think it's called Anand. There is this actor in India, Rajesh Khanna, and another actor, Amitabh Bachchan. In that movie, there is a particular dialogue where this guy, Rajesh Khanna, tells to Amitabh Bachchan, the other actor, that Babu Moshai, Zindagi lambi nahi badi honi chahiye. That means he says that your life should not be long, it should be big. So what is more important in life is to do big things in life, to have big goals, rather than to have a long life. So you can pack a lot in your short life, no matter how short or long it is, if you aspire to big things in life. And you might have a long life, but it may still not be a big life, because you never aspired to a big life. You just had a long, and maybe by some accounts, a very miserable life, because it was not aspiring to anything big. Does it answer you? I'm trying my best to be cognizant of the time.
Yes, of course, Rahul. If you can give some details of how to get into those sessions, that will be great in the chat.
Sure, I will. You do. I'll leave my email in the chat, so you can drop me an email, and I can give you more details of how to do that.
Sure,
any other
thank
question?
you.
I think we have run out of time, but we can probably take one question with the permission of the hosts.
Sure, Aditya, here you have a virtual hand raised. This is the last question that we'll be taking up. Aditya, you're not audible.
Okay, so Aditya is not audible. Mayuresh has a question. Why don't you go ahead, Mayuresh?
Yeah, Rahul, I really appreciate it. It was a very nice session. The impressive thing which I feel that the Titanic style which you have shown, it is thinking if we are sinking, why are we 100 of feet up in the air? So can you just a little bit brief on that? It is very interesting.
Yeah, I think somehow my slide is stuck, but that example was from this movie called Titanic.
Yes.
So in that movie Titanic, it's like this ship is sinking. So the ship is sinking, and if you're standing here, you might think, oh, I'm rising up, right? So this is often what happens to companies, and what happens in life, that you don't often realize that that the ship is sinking, and you might feel that I'm at the top of the world. So in the context of the discussion that we are having about this, about salary, what I was trying to say is that this ship is like a company that is going to sink. Again, I don't like to take specific names, but nothing better than Kodak to explain this example. So in the, let's say in the late 1990s, just when the digital cameras were about to come, digital camera had not yet come, and more people were getting affluent, and they were able to afford those reel cameras where you used to put the reels. So the sales of Kodak actually shot up within that short period of time. And then you might think, okay, we are on the top of the world, and you might fail to see that there is a big iceberg that is here, which is the digital cameras, which are going to totally disrupt your entire business model, and this whole ship is going to sink. And the same thing can apply to your careers as well as individuals, that you might be getting a very high salary here, and without knowing how long that salary is going to last, you might be thinking I'm on the top of the world, whereas there might be a disruption that is coming to totally overtake your career. For example, let's say, I mean, cryptocurrency is a great example of that, right? It goes to so many highs and ups, and then you realize, oh, this euphoria that is fueling it is totally not justified, and there might be some sanity on the block, which you can compare to iceberg, which might bring this back into perspective. Or for example, you might have a career that for example, if you're a trader in a bank, most of this trading is going to be automated. So traders get paid a lot of money for a short period of time. They might enjoy that, but then once most of this trading gets automated, they might actually end up losing their job. So at that point in time, whatever 10 or 15 years of career they have put into it, all that sinks. So that is the idea that I was trying to communicate through this picture.
Okay. Thanks a lot. It was a very nice session. Thanks, Rahul.
Thank you so much, Rahul. Aditya, just because you raised your hand earlier.
Yeah, sorry. Now I think you can hear. There was some setup issues. Rahul, in the equation, instead of subtracting it, why, if you just put an addition, what will happen?
Yeah. So are you a mathematician or an engineer by training?
Yes, from IIT Bombay.
Yeah. So this is what happens when I do this class in IITs as well. So they always come up with these permutation and combinations. So so
it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah. So let me just go to the equation. So what do you like to do? So you would like to put attainment is equal to happiness plus desire.
Yes, because desires cannot be stopped, at least in the 21st and 22nd century.
In any century, they cannot be stopped, and they should not be stopped. Otherwise, as we discussed, you will not be able to aspire to the goals that we have as individuals and collectively as humans. So you are saying I can put attainment is equal to happiness plus desire.
Yes. Because if I wanted to become a Baba or a Muni, then yes, this equation holds perfectly true for me.
Yeah. So what would that mean, though? I'm trying to do this along with you. So when I say attainment is equal to happiness plus desire, so my attainment is equal to my, if I increase my happiness, then I've attained more. If I increase my desires, I've attained more. Is that what you're trying to say?
So the way I look at it is probably maybe completely wrong, but let's set a desire, maybe moderate or aggressive, attain it, and you achieve the happiness. So it's in combination, and it's always reversal. You may suffer losses, but you attain something throughout that. So I think it has kind of a reversible. It's a reversible reaction.
Yeah. You're absolutely right about that. So you see, all you need to do is to make this positive, right? So let's talk about the Baba, and we'll talk about the CEO also. Okay. So for a Baba, he has this very low, right? So because this is very, of course, by the way, Babas also have desire. Huh? They all like followers.
Yeah.
So their desire is to get as many followers as they can. So, but anyways, let's leave that discussion aside. Let's say a Baba, a truly enlightened Baba, has managed to lower his desire. then the amount that will make him happy is very little attainment. As long as in Buddhism, the monks are not supposed to, they're supposed to consume only what is donated to them. So that kind of a Baba can get very little. He attains just enough food for that that day, and they become happy, right? So this is at the Baba level, in using your own words. Now, if you look at the CEO's desire would be here, right? So he would be desiring my company should get a profit of $1 billion this quarter, right? And so for him, for us to make sure that the CEO is happy, we need to make this attainment also proportionately, just like you mentioned, increase in that same proportion. So the only way you can make the CEO even close to happiness is by at least getting 990 million, if not a billion, right? Only then you can probably reach in that area. Definitely, if your attainment is a loss of 500 million, he's not going to be happy. So you're right. These have to be in proportionate. And similar to that, I would also say there is something called competence to arrogance ratio, something which I like to also compare. So you can be arrogant like Steve Jobs was, but then you have to back it up with your competency. You have to have that competency to arrogance ratio in balance. But you can't be an arrogant guy and you don't have the competency, right? So yes, you're right. These things go hand in hand. So you have to always make sure that if your desires are very high, then you have within yourself the ability to attain that, because if your desires are very high and you don't possess the skills to attain those, then you are setting yourself up for happiness. Similarly, if you are a very arrogant person, you need to have your competency there so that yes, people respect your arrogance. People do respect arrogance, but only when you are able to match it with your competency. Does that answer you, Aditya?
Yeah, just I wanted to add another dimension to it.
Sure.
So thank you very much for the lecture. It was really enlightening as well as informative. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. I think, Ekta ji, given the amount of discussion we have had on this equation, we should probably look at this equation in much more detail in the other sessions that we could do.
I too think so. Rahul, we can explore this for sure, and maybe we can work on it together to make it more acceptable, maybe for the future sessions, right?
Sure.
So that the discrimination. So guys, I think Rahul has really taken this session forward nicely, and he has probably enlightened us. I truly feel really good about being in this session, Rahul, and thank you for such open discussion on where we are and where we should be going. I just it just reminds me of the conversation between the Alice and the Cheshire Cat, that when Alice asked the cat, where should I go from here? And the cat asked back Alice, that where do you want to go? So Alice said, I really don't know. And then the cat says, it doesn't matter which way you go. So actually, it's very important to the desire and the goals that you were talking about, that the desire is always there to progress. But if you really don't know or you don't have that goal, it doesn't matter which way you take up, right? So Rahul, this was a real great session for all of us, I believe. And we look forward to hosting you again, Rahul, probably on this equation, and maybe we can take that forward again, how to find the ikigai of ourselves. Thank you so much, Rahul. Hina, would you like to add something, please?
First of all, I think we all agree that this was the perfect start, to our new year. This is the first ECAP session in 2023. So this is exciting that we have, this session has made us reflect on some very crucial aspect. All right, going fast is not the only thing. Going in the right direction is also very important. I actually want to, build up a little more advanced nuance on the whole session, wherein at one point in time, Mr. Rahul said that, consider you are the pot of money. You yourself are that. And where will you invest yourself? Actually, even as I look at this happiness equal to attainment minus desire, right now, right here, If I am the source of happiness, if I am the source of money, if I am the source of creativity, if I am the source of all that is, if I am, what they call is one, which is beyond the physical, the mental, and the emotional self, the true self that I am. So even if my desire gets fulfilled even before I desire. So which means, like in Rishi Muni's case, you reach to that nuanced stage wherein just the moment you think and it gets manifested. So I think that is truly a happiness wherein even without you asking or desiring, your desires are getting fulfilled. And then these concepts don't come in. So I think it's more a matter of us somewhere. And when you actually work from your Ikigai, as Mr. Rahul Singh rightly said, that make it about what you want to offer than what you want to get. So the moment you are the source, you are already rich with what you want to offer, and the whole thing magnetizes everything towards you. You naturally get from the universe what you offer. So I think it's a very, very important, how I look at it personally is to every day, every moment, keep asking myself, am I aligned to who I am, or am I digressing? Am I aligned to myself, or am I digressing? And that is what Mr. Rahul Singh said about abhyas. So abhyas is the most important takeaway for me, that it is never a done deal. It is not that you found your ikigai and you will not be lost, because there are so many things around. You have to keep reminding of yourself every day, every morning, think about it and see whether you're aligned or not. So I think for me, definitely after this session also, and I personally do this exercise every day, my why. So thank you so very much for indeed, the day we had asked, it was I think Gita Jayanti, the day we first spoke, and we manifested this, and really amazing. Thank you so much, and we are looking forward, as we all agree, to more such nuances via discussion. So super, 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 super thank you, and God bless everyone, and Happy New Year to all of you. May that spark within you of who am I drives you in the kind of, even when you're attending your EMBA sessions, even when you're walking, even when you're with your family, that who you are be the core of, every action that you do. So God bless you. And yeah, I think we are already 16 minutes past 2. So in India here. So thank you and God bless, and we see each other soon.
Thank you so much. It was
Thank you
really
for joining.
lovely to be speaking to such an enlightened audience. It made my job easy because I got the answers I was looking for without actually probing much to the attendees. So I'm very happy to be having done this session, and my pleasure. If there is an opportunity again where I could speak about the equation or something else, I would be happy to.
Sure, Rahul, we look forward to it. And guys, that is a kickstart to you getting that compliment from Rahul that you all are an enlightened crowd, and keep that shine moving ahead through the year. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Take care. Thank you so much, Rahul. And we look forward to have you again for sure.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Bye-bye, guys. Take care. See
Bye-bye.
you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, people.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Alina. Bye. 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 Thank you so much, people. Ending the show now. Take care. Whatever is left for the weekend, enjoy.